And hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to another exciting edition of the Edfields Podcast. Today is really, really exciting, actually, because the team decided to do something slightly different. Today, we have a live audience, and so please give it up for yourselves. Yeah. Not sure if our viewers or listeners can hear the live audience, but yeah, we have a room full of, young people, many of whom are business owners and are solving some of the continent's biggest problems, right? And so today's topic is really around exploring legalities, governance, compliance when it comes to startups here in Ghana and beyond. My name is Stephen. I'm sure you can already tell that I am not a lawyer. Just from the way I'm dressed, you can see how my panelists are dressed. They look like they mean business, and I look homeless. But I think my expertise is really in business consulting, startup advisory, venture acceleration, and incubation and acceleration programming. And so a lot of the work that I do is with startups, right? And so this conversation is really, really important because I do get a lot of questions around the law and startups. And so to get started, I think we can do a quick round of introductions, and then maybe you guys can tell us why the law and startups is important before we even get into the conversation. So over to my panelists who are dressed really, really nice.
Hi, I'm Jasmine, and I'm a senior associate with Edfields Attorneys.
Hello, everybody. My name is Prince. I'm also a senior associate with Edfields.
I am Alberta. I am an associate with Edfields Attorneys.
To tackle your first question, every business has to grow within a certain environment. And I always trace answers to these questions to sociology and the little political science I know. That law has come to regulate society so that we have order. In our parts of this world where you have very limited resources, where lots of people are chasing that limited resource, if you don't have regulatory system in place, we will go back to the state of nature where only those who were surviving, those who were strong were surviving. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't have that maneuvering spirit, you were going to be devoured like that. Mm-hmm. And so the law is there, one, to regulate the market and the environment within which the businesses are supposed to thrive. And secondly, the law is there to promote good business, where we are very sure that everybody is doing legitimate business. So startup is just like someone who is a very small or someone who is a weak entity within the ecosystem. You just came. If the law is not protecting you, those big ones will devour you. And so that is why it is important that if you are a startup, you should know how the law regulates the ecosystem or the environment within which you find yourself, and how the law can help or protect your interests. So it's very important.
All right, amazing. So what I'm getting from your point is that the law really, really exists to allow for maybe equal opportunity, fair competition.
Level playing ground.
Right, and to also protect startups and consumers.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
All right, so I think now we can get into the meat of the matter, right? When you hear about startups and the law, you immediately think about business registration, sole proprietorship, limited liability, limited by guarantee. I think these things can be very, very confusing for anybody, especially that's trying to start a business, like what is the best possible way to structure my startup here in Ghana? And what are some of the considerations that I should be making, especially at a very, very early stage?
Well, startups, very important. And once you are a business just about to begin, it is important that you think about the goals you intend to have. You must think about whether you're one who is capable of taking risk, and so your risk tolerance. You can also think about how you want the business to grow. So, for example, business startups usually we would refer to sole proprietorship, as you did mention, Steve, and then company limited by shares. Now, for sole proprietorship, these are businesses run by individuals and are quite simple. There's less risk taking. It's quite cheap to run such businesses. They are businesses run by yourself, by your name. So you can run the business just by yourself. But in situations where you want a name tagged to that business as a sole proprietorship, we have the opportunity to register that business name at the Office of the Registrar of Companies. And that is done under the Business Name Registration Act. And it's very important that taking a business name, you must take your time to think about it, because you would realize that you may get a fantastic name for the business and think that that is the best name, but it would shock you that by the time you go to the Office of the Registrar General, someone is already using that name. So I can decide to take a name like Elite J's Classics, and I believe it is the best business name I can have for my startup. And I mean, it's unique. But you would get there with the registration and you realize that 1,001 people have mixed up the name. There's J's Elite, there's Elite Classics, there's Classics J, and I mean, that dream of having that name is. So it's very important. Now, secondly, with the sole proprietorship, you can have a situation where you are responsible for the liabilities that come with it. For example, if for some reason the business goes down, there are some liabilities that come with it. You may be owing banks. Yes, you may be owing banks, and the banks may be coming after you for those loans. As compared to the company and the limited company by shares, the courts or the court or whoever you're owing will come after your personal properties. Yeah. So there is no distinction between you and the business, company and the business.
That is for sole proprietorship.
It is just you. And so for the liabilities, it's you and everything you own, which would, I mean, then when we go for the company limited by shares, that has members or shareholders who have contributed and decided to hold a certain amount of shares. So there's contribution from different people. I think with that you can have up to 50 people handling that company. Now with that that has a more formal and structured and growth-ready environment. It comes with directors. It comes with members of the company. It comes with other responsibilities where you need to file your annual tax returns as compared with that of the sole proprietorship, where whatever tax you pay is on your personal tax you pay. But with the company, you are looking at corporate tax. That has to do with the tax you pay from your profits. All right, so that is also very important. With that, the company and your person are separate. So in legal terms, we'll say that it's a separate legal entity. And so the company is seen as a natural person. The company can be sued. The company can be sued. The company can sue. The company can own assets. Whereas with sole proprietorship, your personal asset is the asset would come for. But when it comes to a company limited by shares, it is the assets of the company that will be the subject of any litigation or whatever it is. So basically, in a nutshell, that is the difference between that. So based on how, if your business is going to be a small business, you would usually go for the sole proprietorship just to test the business environment, to see how it is. And if your capital is quite little, you go for the sole proprietorship, and as it grows, you can always change it to a limited. So the law allows you to move from a sole proprietorship to a company limited.
Yeah, it's
by
good.
shares.
It's very good you make that point, because I was going to ask, are you able to easily switch between maybe one type of registration to the other? But I think that is clear. But maybe just still staying on that point, right? What if I want to register my startup, but I want to register it as a separate legal entity, right? But I own 100% of the startup. Could I still register it as a limited liability?
Yes. You can do that. In that case, you are the sole shareholder of the company, all right? But apart from the shareholders, you must have your directors, you must have your company secretary, you must have your auditors.
So you need to have all of those structures in place, even at the point of
Yes,
registration.
that is
Yeah.
correct.
My other question is around naming, right? And I find this really, really interesting, especially in the space that we operate in, right? So for many startups, there's the legal entity itself, and there's the product, right? And especially if you're dealing with a lot of tech startups, right? What they are selling is really the platform or the app or the product or something like that. Are there any legal implications to maybe having a product name, right, that may not necessarily be the company name?
So let me take that question. A product name and the name of the company.
Yeah. So let's say, for instance, I registered my business as Stephen and Co., right?
Yeah.
But I have this amazing ride-hailing platform called, I don't know, s.com, right? But that is not registered, right? But I'm operating s.com under Stephen and Co.
Exactly.
What does that look like?
You know, I am smiling because someone has used something like that to beat me in court before.
Okay.
So there was a case, my client was supposed to sue someone for insulting him on social media and publishing some things. And the person we are talking about is a newspaper. Then we sued the newspaper. For obvious reasons, I can't mention the name. Then we get to court. Their lawyer comes to say that that is a product. And me knowing that if that product came from a company limited by a company limited by shares, what it means in law is that whoever registered that company is different from the company, because at the time, the company had become a complete legal person. That company can own property. So one of the things the company is owning is the newspaper. So you can't come to court and sue a property. It's just like me going to court and I know that the mic you're holding is yours. I go and sue the mic. Mm-hmm. When I win, how do I take whatever I have asked the court to give me from the mic? It's a product. So I had to go back to court and go and tell the court that I have found the person who insulted my client. Yeah. You get it? Go and join the person. So what I'm driving at is that immediately you incorporate a company, what you are dealing with is the legal person you have created, which is the company. If it is a sole proprietorship and you don't register, it is not illegal that you've not registered a sole proprietorship, because there's no law that compels you to register. But if something happened to that particular business, it is just you. So if what we are talking about is something you did which became a product, that product cannot be sued, that product cannot enter into contracts. I have seen some contracts where some product, so and so biscuit, and I see it and I tell the people that I see, you are treading on a very dangerous path. What you have put there as signing the contract is the business, is the product from the business. When it comes to enforceability of that particular contract, it's going to be difficult because we are looking for legal persons, and products are not persons.
So in that case, right, where does the consumer protection come in? Because many startups are selling the product. Like the average person does not know who is behind the product or what legal entity is behind the product. And so in a case where something goes wrong, if we cannot hold the product accountable, are we able to hold the legal entity that owns the product accountable?
So the person or the one you are supposed to hold accountable is the one who owns the product. So there's this principle called buyer beware and then seller beware, right? Just like when I am selling something, the law imposes an obligation on me that I should be careful that what I'm selling is good enough. I have told you all the mistakes around it or with it before you buy it. And then the one who is buying is also supposed to be aware of all the things that are supposed to be done by a buyer. So I'm just using this as an example, so I draw in the point that, for example, if you are coming to buy a car from me, and I don't give you assurances that, oh, this car is this, and you come with your own mechanic. The person checks everything and then says that, oh, it's good to go. And you don't check the papers, but you rely on what I said, that the car is mine, and you buy. If at the end of the day it comes out that the car wasn't mine, because I give you the assurance that it is mine, then you can sue me for deceiving you, misrepresentation. But as far as defects in the car are concerned, you brought your own mechanic to check. So now the obligation was on you to identify the problems with the car, which you did not. In this circumstance, when you are coming to buy a product that is supposed to, say, be registered with a specific regulatory body, there is an obligation imposed on you, the seller or the owner of that product, to state the name of the person who is selling it. That is why even the small biscuits we have, when you check the back, you will see produced by and all those things, they are there. It is for me, the seller, to write. It is for you to find out. So if something happens and you are unable to find who made it, then you are just there. You cannot go and assert your right. But if it comes out that the product you gave, you did not give me any indication to know who actually owned it, then it means that you were hiding something. That is where you find yourself wanting.
Okay, so in the interest of maybe the startup founders and potential business owners that are listening to us right now, what I'm getting from this is that, legally speaking, there's nothing wrong with having a product name that is separate from the legal entity, right? And you can be able to operate your platform or your app independent of the legal name of the entity. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's a marketing strategy.
Exactly.
Yes. If you decide that your name is Ken and your product is going to be Ken App, it is because possibly you are very, very popular. That name, people will associate with it.
Yeah.
And so you see most of the popular people, I'll use Cristiano Ronaldo. I like his perfumes a lot. And the perfume, each of them is CR7 something, legacy, CR7 this. It's because people cannot see legacy and just associate with CR7. But immediately they see CR7, you say, oh, because it's from Ronaldo, I'll buy. It does not mean that so far as he has registered his company as CR7, all products are supposed to bear that name.
Okay.
It's not. It's purely on marketing strategy and your choice, how you think your business will grow. I think that's it.
I think that's very, very interesting to know. So, founders listening to us, if you had any confusion around business registration and you were looking forward to registering the name of your business as the name of your product, you don't necessarily have to worry too much about that. Maybe my other question is around operating as a startup when you are not registered. So here at ALX, we run an early stage entrepreneurship program called the Founder Academy, right? So what we're saying is we're building foundational knowledge in starting a business. So anybody that has an interest in starting a business or possibly even has an idea for a business can join this program, and then they can get some training and they can start a business. Many of these guys move from ideation to maybe what we call an MVP, a minimum viable product. They need to go to the market and do some testing and all of that. Usually within that cycle, the businesses are not registered, right? I guess what we want to understand here is it legal to be operating at that level when you are not legally registered?
Okay, so if you are doing, for example, a sole proprietorship, as Jasmine mentioned earlier, there's no requirement for you to register a sole proprietorship. So if you are dealing with a sole proprietorship, there's nothing wrong with it. You can start before you decide to register. For if you want to do incorporation, you want to do a company limited with shares, generally you would have to register, but we have something we call pre-incorporation contracts. So before you do the actual registration, you may have to do some stuff. Like you have to hire people, you have to get a building, you have to get a space. So you enter into a contract with a landlord, sort of, before you start your business. You are allowed to do that, but for the pre-incorporation contracts, they have to be ratified by the company after incorporation.
So who is creating this contract?
So we have promoters. We have people we call promoters. They are the ones who are sort of running. The business hasn't started running, but they are the ones, putting things together before incorporation.
So in this case, it would be the founders.
Yes.
Whoever has the bearer of the idea.
Yes.
Okay.
So once the company is incorporated, the company acting through its directors would have to ratify the pre-incorporation contract. So, for example, if you entered into a lease agreement, it will have to come before the directors, and the directors will ratify it for it to take effect as if at the time you entered into that contract, the company was incorporated.
Okay.
The danger with that is that where, as Jasmine mentioned, with the naming, where you create the name and then you start entering into contracts before you incorporate the company. When it is time for you to register and you go to the ORC, that's the Office of the Registrar of Companies, they may tell you that your name is misleading because maybe when they look at your name, it doesn't tell people what you actually do. It gives the impression that you're doing something else. Or someone,
is that really a requirement? That your name has to necessarily be related to the product or service?
It doesn't have to be related, but it doesn't have to mislead. There's a difference. I don't know if you get it.
I find that very interesting, because I look at a lot of global brands that have names that have absolutely nothing to do with what they are doing. Like if you think of an Apple, right, you don't think of tech, but they are probably the biggest tech company.
It's allowed, but it shouldn't be misleading. So when you go to register your business, you go through a process. They will first look at the name to see whether it is misleading or whether someone has, because you are going to register the name and it's going to be on record, someone may have used that exact name. Or misleading in the sense that it may sound or look like another company that is registered.
Okay.
So you'd have to change it before the registration can be done.
Some are even offensive.
Exactly. You get it.
So the ORC
yeah.
has, did I say ORS? The ORC, right, has the power to deny you
Yes,
the registration
Yes.
based on
the name.
the name.
But
Okay.
usually they don't just deny you. They tell you that you have to change the name. So you keep changing and they keep checking. Once it's approved, then you can
I
continue.
think
with the
my last
registration.
question around registration would be, is there any database that exists today, possibly online, that I could go on there and check if I was looking to register a business and I wanted to call it, say, Future List? Can I go on there and see which other companies are probably called Future List? Is there a platform like that?
Yes, there is. So the ORC has a website. I don't know about now. For some time, it wasn't working properly, but I've had the opportunity to check. Usually, when someone wants to register a business, you can go to the website. I think there's a tab called Name Search. So you just type. It gives everything from sole proprietorship to company limited with shares to company limited by guarantee. So you see the names. You just type the name. It gives you all the names of the companies that contain the word you've put there.
Okay.
Or sometimes it gives you options. You can look for the ones that sound like or look like the word you are putting in there. So you have an idea that maybe when you go there, your name will be rejected, so you have to change it. So that you can either do that, or if the website doesn't work for you, you can just walk to the office of the Registrar of Companies and they would look at it for you. Yeah.
No, it's really, really interesting to know that there's a platform that exists, and I think that could save people a lot of time. But if that doesn't work, nothing stops you from going to the office as well. So, but maybe moving on from business registration and structuring and setting up. I've worked with a lot of startups over the last couple of years, and one of the problems that seems to come up a lot is founder dynamics, right? And so we decide to partner and start a business, and then maybe some months or years down the line, we cannot agree on strategy or direction, and then we have to split up, right? I feel like in situations like that, a founder agreement is supposed to protect the company or protect the founder, right? So my question, now we're diving into, founder agreements and, constituting your team for your startup or your business. If I have a founder agreement before I register my company, right? Does that document, is that a legal document?
Okay, let me take that. Actually, that is supposed to be done before the registration. Okay. So it is very useful that you have that. That is why I think people even call it founders or founder agreement. Now, I assume that you are using the word partnership loosely, where it can be that two people are coming together to have a company or a partnership. We always say that even the devil doesn't know the intentions of man until he speaks or he acts. That is why, me personally, I trust papers more than human beings. Yes. Put it on paper. One, I think yesterday or so we're discussing something like that, and I mentioned that one of the most important things you should always have in such agreements will be accounting principles or accounting clauses. How do you account for the contributions that the persons involved made? How do you account or how do you share profit? That is a very fundamental clause you should have in an agreement. What happens when there's a fight? Human beings are moved by interest. Today, your interests are aligning. The next day, you are fighting. How do you resolve such conflicts? It has to be in there. Number 3, today you are 2. The next day, maybe another person is expressing interest. How do you admit a new person? And so all these things cannot wait after you have incorporated the contract, the company. It cannot wait when the company has become a giant, because that's where the greed will come in. Yeah. At the inception stage, you have all these things discussed, put on paper, signed. And that is what I think a lot of people put together as MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. For me, well, people will say I'm ruthless, but I don't really advise people to just go for memorandum of understanding, because that only expresses an intention to do something. An intention to do something is not a contract.
So basically what you're saying is that document is enforceable by law.
Absolutely.
Right, and you don't necessarily have to have registered your business to now think of a founder agreement.
No.
It's one of the first things you need to think about if you're going into any kind of partnership or collaboration.
Very
with
useful.
Startups, founders would usually consider who, for example, the shareholders would be, who the members of the company would be. They must also think about who the directors of the company would be, who would be responsible for dealing with the day-to-day runnings of the company. You must also think about your audit system, who will be responsible for dealing with your financials, who will be responsible for filing your yearly returns. You must think about a company secretary who also has a role to play. So, unfortunately, if you are going for a company limited by shares, your manual or your handbook should be the Companies Act, because everything is incorporated there. And you would also need some legal advisor who would usually give you some independent advice on the way to go, would help you with a lot of compliance issues. So Prince has touched on the agreement. Very important. Agreements must have everything: dispute resolution. When there is a conflict, what do we do? Do we have an internal procedure to settle disputes? If that doesn't work, where do we go? What do we do? Do we go into negotiation? Do we go into mediation? Or do we go to some may want to do arbitration, or do we go to a court of competent jurisdiction to settle the disputes for you? If one party wakes up one morning and says, I don't want to be part of the business, I want the contract to be terminated, you must have a termination clause, the criteria for ending the relationship. If for any reason the company goes bankrupt, you must have something for winding up the company. So the agreement, the structure, very important, and you will not go wrong once you think about these things within the founders' agreement, even before you register the company.
All right, I think
Let me add this. Something funny just came to my head. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. I'm just talking about the mistake so that I can talk about what you need to do. You just be there, and then a friend will call you, Charlie, I'm going to register a company. They say I should bring 2 directors. Can you come and sign for me? And you being a very good friend, you just go, you won't read anything, you sign. You see, the law imposes obligations on people who are called directors. You are the agents of the company. Whatever the company does is attributable to you. So if there are situations where, for example, the company has gone to sign some contracts, you will be thinking that, oh, I just signed some things for my friend. Your friend cannot be found. They will go to ORC to go and check the company profile, and they will see that Ejeku is a director. That's what we call lifting the veil of incorporation. There's a veil that is covering the faces of. It is not a veil you can see. It is a veil yes, an imaginable veil that we cover the faces of the directors with. They will lift the veil and then see that Ejeku is there. You are the one they will sue.
Yeah.
That you were the director. So it's one of the problems. Get to know the responsibilities, the duties, the privileges that acting as a director comes with before you sign. So that you don't just say that because you are a small startup, you will use your wife as the first director and your first son.
Many people do that, Prince.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we definitely need a part 2 of this conversation because I have so many more questions that I don't think time will allow for us to dive into.